Christmas Day, we had a snowstorm come through, which was rain, snow, then rain again. About 200 miles of interstate was actually shut down because of this storm. Turns out a semi hit a patch of ice and ended up in the ditch. The tow truck company needed some extra people to help unload the semi, so we started by getting all of the equipment together. We put the payloader and the skid steer on the flatbed semi trailer, got everything ready to go, and headed to the scene. Took the convoy about a half hour to travel the 15 miles, but once we got the equipment on scene, we started to stage everything. We dropped off the first of the 20-yard dumpsters as close to the back end of the semi as we could, and then got the back end of the trailer open to see what we've got to deal with. Turns out it was a semi-load of produce. Once enough help was on scene, we got to work. First thing we encountered was 2 pallets of really small tomatoes. Once we got through that, it was 2 pallets of lemons, 2 pallets of mangoes, and another 6 pallets of lemons. Because of the rain-snow mix and the steepness of the ditch, we actually had to drag that dumpster a little bit closer in order to be able to get the garbage to it. Shortly after this, we switched tactics a little bit, took the back door of the semi off, and started to actually load things on pallets and move it with the skid steer. At this point, we've got about a dozen people on scene who are unloading the semi, and we were able to get around 6 pallets unloaded in that first hour. After that, an additional 30 people showed up, and we were able to get the rest of the semi unloaded in the next hour. After removing all of the lemons, we started to run into peppers. Red peppers, green peppers, jalapeno peppers, habanero peppers. For ease of movement, everything that's in a box, we're going to try to keep in a box, and then later on, we're going to have to go through and scoop up all of the loose produce. It would be interesting to know how many thousands of pounds of food we were able to move in these 2 hours by hand. And for everyone's safety on scene, we had people park in the ditch on the other side of the semi. That way, if there was an accident, hopefully we would all be protected. With this, we're finally getting to the end of the produce. And at this point, about 35 people can go home, and everyone else is staying to help tip the semi back up. Not sure how much experience this semi driver had, but he was from Arizona. And I'm sure he was not used to driving in these types of conditions. They're going to get the 2 semi wreckers in place and start to get everything rigged up. At the same time, the other tow trucks are going to be getting all of the other vehicles out of the ditch for the people that showed up to help. And unfortunately, this takes us about 5 to 10 minutes per vehicle. We'll start by taking the cable and chains down to the vehicles and getting everything hooked up. And with the tow truck up on the road, we can pull all of these vehicles right out of the ditch. Once we got all the vehicles out of the ditch, we're going to focus on the semi. They're going to hook to this semi and trailer in 4 different places and slowly pull it back up, which will minimize any further damage. Between these 2 large semi-wreckers, they're kind of doing a crisscross pattern and slowly pulling on the cables to tip the semi back over. On Kenworth semis, they've got these special attachments that you add to the front bumper in order to pull on the frame. Insert the recovery bar, a locking pin, and a clevis pin. Driver's side was easy, but the passenger side had a bunch of snow in there. Once we got a pry bar and got that all out there, we were able to get that recovery hook installed, and now we're just inspecting all of the rest of the damage. Looks like when the trailer tipped over, it took a bite out of this tire, but unfortunately this tire is going to be the least of their problems. They'll continue to pull the semi just a little bit to get it in a slightly better recovery position. Once they're done with that, they're going to get the strap removed, reposition the tow truck, and run the cable down to the front of the semi. It would be interesting to know how many tons of force this wrecker can pull. And believe it or not, they were actually able to get the semi started and get the air brakes released. At this point, they start pulling on the front of the semi, get it most of the way up and out of the ditch with the cable. Then they simply drive the wrecker forward, pulling the semi out the rest of the way. Because we don't have the interstate completely shut down, they get the semi off to the side as soon as they can. And here's a sight you don't see every day, a 20-yard dumpster going down the interstate. Because of the position the dumpster was in, they had to drag it down the interstate a little bit, pull it off to the side. Then they were finally able to get it lifted up onto the truck. Now that we've got the semi safely out of there, we just need to start packing up all of the equipment. And once again, the steep, muddy banks was an issue for the payloader. I want to say it took 4 attempts before we were finally able to get that thing up and out of the ditch. At this point, the flatbed semi, payloader, 2 wreckers, and semi we pulled out of the ditch were able to take off. Once the dumpster gets loaded, he's able to take off. And the last piece of equipment we have to load is this skid steer. And once again, this winch came in super handy in order to get this skid steer up and on the flatbed. At this point, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and I am super tired. And I know I've got a full day of snow removal ahead of me. But for tonight, we're going to be done with this project and on to the next one.